Hey guys, today I'm going to be introducing you to two new modeling tools. They're called the Bevel Tool and the Matrix Extrude tool. So let's get started right away. Gonna create a cube, drag this up here. Gonna make it editable, press that button. Press the polygons individual faces button. Press the selection tool. And we're gonna select these three sides. So you can do that by clicking on one side and then holding down shift and then clicking the other side. Or you can simply, you see this white circle that's basically hovering around my cursor. Well, if you move that white circle over here, so basically move your cursor over here, see, this is pretty much like a vertex, and as long as just as long as a tiny part of each side you want to select is inside this white circle, you can just click it, and all three of these sides are selected. Now we're going to go to the tools themselves. First, we're going to start with the Bevel tool. Go to Mesh, Create Tools, and Bevel right here. And then we're going to click it, then drag it outwards. And you see, this is what Bevel does. So what Bevel does is it basically extrudes out the sides you've selected, and it also narrows them. And in the process, it creates these straight edges, it creates these new straight faces that connect the edges of the original side to the edge of the new beveled side. So it basically creates kind of like a pyramid like base for the new side that is beveled out. Now there are many settings you can do to basically modify the appearance of this bevel. One of them is the offset mode. We have it at fixed distance, that's the default setting. You can also set it to proportional, which makes it basically kind of like wider, makes it more proportional to its extrusion length. You can make it radial, but that doesn't really do anything here. But I just do it at fixed distance. You can also change the offset, basically changes how much it's narrowed. You can increase the subdivisions. Now, as you can see right now, basically these trapezoidal faces connecting the edges of the original side to the edge of the new beveled side, they're basically straight and flat. But when you increase the subdivisions, it divides these trapezoidal faces up into different segments. And the more segments you add, the rounder they get. So we're going to add 10 segments here. And you see they now have kind of like a round, they look kind of round. You can also change the depth, which basically changes how round this is according to how many segments you have. So it goes from negative 100% to 100%. And as we drag this down, you see it gets less rounder until at 0 it should be pretty much straight at 0. And then when it gets to negative 100, it's kind of like concave, becomes kind of like curved inwards instead of outwards. You can also change the extrusion. How you can do that? It's basically you can click on these sides and maybe drag them out or in, or you can just change it right here. We'll talk about max angles and preserve groups later, but the shape is set at round. You can also change it to profile. Profile is where you basically draw a spline, and it can basically, the shape of the bevel will basically be in the form of that spline. All you have to do is draw a spline and then paste it here to where to this box profile spline, and it should bevel according to that spline. I've never really tried it before, but you can try it ahead for yourself. Just draw a spline and put it right here, and then it should bevel according to the shape of that spline. Now this is user, basically makes it a little flatter for the user part, but I like to keep it at the round shape. Now rounding end guns, there's this checkbox here, when you click that, it basically gives you it basically renders these trapezoidal shapes for you without rendering anything else. So when you do rounding angle without rounding angles, the segments are still here. You can see the individual segments judged by the lines that are visible. But when you click the checkbox rounded angles, these lines disappear, and you basically have a rendered version of these trapezoidal sides. But only these are rendered, not everything else. Farm brake motors, that doesn't really do anything. Probably something to do with the interior, probably. Farm brake motors, however, I'm gonna check the box rounded angle so you can see this better. But farm brake motors, when you check this box, you see these little kind of reflectance, these white stripes on these trapezoids. Well, when you check this box, they disappear. Alright, that should be about it. Now we're going to go ahead and discuss. Well, we're going to set this back to 0 subdivisions. And we're going to make a new cube. Drag it upwards. Click the side button, selection tool, select all 3 sides, mesh, create tool as bevel. Now this is all really nice, but what if you want to bevel all these sides out together at once and have them still be connected to each other without instead of narrowing each individual side, you want to narrow all 3 sides together as a whole with the 3 sides still being connected. Well, what you have to do is change the max angle. You see max angle here, 89 degrees. Set it to 90 degrees because 89 degrees means that they cannot go, these 3 sides, they can only be beveled in their dimension. They can't go into the other dimension because the max angle is 89 degrees. If you set it to 90 degrees or higher, they should be able to go into other dimensions and basically stay connected, these 3 sides. So now when I bevel it, you see all 3 sides are still together, and all of them have been beveled outwards. And you can still change the subdivisions here too. Now this button is very important when you want to do this. Preserve groups. When you uncheck this button, they go back to being beveled on each individual side. Preserve groups is basically the button you have to check in order for them to stay connected. And you have to change the max angle to over 90 degrees for them to be able to go into other dimensions and thus stay connected. But in order to guarantee that they will stay connected, you have to check this box, preserve groups. Make sure that's checked. Now there's one more thing I forgot to cover. It's the tension. Tension, basically, at first glance, it looks like it does the same thing as depth. It makes the trapezoidal signs less round. It makes the curve inwards. But what tension does, it doesn't change the roundness, but actually it changes the base to which these new beveled sides are supported on. So it also goes from negative 100% to 100%. But when you drag it all the way to negative 100%, you see that it has a very, very weak base. It's like the shapes are basically held to these tiny little, especially these tiny little bases. And then as you gradually go up, the bases become stronger, they go outward, finally they become about 100% back to these curved trapezoidal bases. There's one more thing we should cover with the bevel tool, and that is if you want to bevel these sides again, when you click these sides, you just change the extrusion. What if you want to bevel these sides again? Well, you have to click on another tool, say the selection tool, then click back in to the bevel tool. Then when you do it again, they should bevel out once again. Now the reason for this is because many objects are usually objects or different sides only need to be beveled once. If you want to bevel multiple times, usually you just bevel and change the extrusion. But if you want to bevel multiple times, this is the way to do it. Now we are going to move on to the next tool, which is the Matrix Extrude. Now I want to once again select these three sides. I'm going to zoom out because Matrix Extrude could get a little bit, it involves a lot of space at first. Now go to Mesh, create Tools, Matrix Extrude, right below the inner extrude tool. And we just click this and drag it out. You see that is Matrix Extrude. Basically does three things. It extrudes it extrudes the faces outwards. It bends them and also narrows them. So that it's a very useful tool if you want some it's because it's very flexible. So earlier when we were using the extrude and inner extrude, it could only extrude in one direction. It couldn't narrow, it could not bend or anything like that. But this allows it to be extruded, it to be narrowed or expanded, and allows it to be bended as well. So it's very flexible, and that's why it can be very useful. Now there are also many settings to this. Polygon coordinates. If you uncheck this box, they will all matrix extrude in one direction, and that doesn't look very pretty. So make sure you have this box checked. You can also decrease the steps. So as you can see, each side has been matrix extruded. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 segments. You can decrease or increase these segments by decreasing the steps, which decreases the segments, or increasing them. You can also change the move. You can also change the move settings. Here, if next to the move row, there are 3 tabs. If you change the settings for the first tab, you'll be able to move them basically up and down. Move the extruded sides up and down. You move the middle. You change the settings for the middle tab. You can move them left and right. And you change the settings for this tab, you can basically make them bigger. Basically scale the entire shape that has been extruded outwards. You can basically make it bigger. You can also extend it outwards. You can also scale the sides that have been extruded. So right now the default is at 80%, 80%, and 80%. Now go to the scale row. If you change the first tab in that row, you will increase its width, the width of each segment. Face that's been extruded. You change the settings for the middle tab, you increase or decrease the length. And if you change the final tab, nothing really happens. It should be something about it should change something inside this shape. Yeah, when you change this tab, nothing really happens, but it should maybe it does something to the inside. I'm not sure, but basically width and length. That's the 2 dimensions that you change when you modify the scale settings. Rotate. This is my favorite row, rotate. When you change the settings for the first tab in this row, you can move them, you can bend them up and down. When you change the settings for the middle tab, you can bend them left and right. This one is my favorite, by the way. When you change this tab, the rightmost tab at the rotate row, when you change the settings for this tab, you can basically bend the extruded segments themselves. You can basically twist them. So yeah, these are all the settings you can do for Matrix Extrude. All all these settings combined turn out to be extruded, scaled, and bended, which makes it very flexible and sometimes very, very useful. It can also be used as a decoration, but mostly it's for flexibility. It's used for flexibility. So you can experiment with these settings on your own for Matrix Extrude as well as Bevel, and maybe you could try creating something out of these using these tools yourself. So that is all for today. Hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, please let me know, but I'll be happy to answer them. And that is all for today. Have a great day. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you later.